Boom! No Man's Sky is out at long last, and some of you are asking why I haven't played it yet. Well, it comes out a few days later on PC than it does on PS4, and frankly, it's a big game, and I've been looking forward to it for a long time, and I don't know how I'll actually feel about it when I actually get the chance to play it, but I know that I'll have a better experience with almost any game on the PC than I will on my PS4, which I use when I have to, but it's just easier and often a better experience on the PC. And right now, people on PS4 are complaining about weird field of view issues and some resolution issues, and we'll see. Some of those things should hopefully be better on PC. I assume, of all things, I can improve my FOV, even if it's not an official feature. I'm sure we'll find a way to change that, to have a better and less seasick experience. After all, confined FOVs are generally meant for televisions that are far away across the room, because it feels more natural at that distance, but on a close-up monitor, which is where I play everything really, I will just feel bad the whole time. But anyway, I wanted to make a video chronicling my feelings before I play No Man's Sky, partly because people have been asking me for the entire last year non-stop how I feel about this game, and I've been kind of putting off talking about it to some extent, but I feel like this situation's weird enough and interesting enough that I kind of want to get my feelings in at the last minute before the game actually comes out. And if you're watching this and you've already played the game and you don't want to hear any of the stuff, and you're like, why are you making a game? Why are you making the opinion video about a game you've never played when it's already out? And like, this is stupid. Well, I'm surprised you're still watching, but I've already warned you. So here we go. So let's talk about hype, just in general, and the monster that No Man's Sky has become in that capacity, because people have been talking about it for so long, and with relatively confined amounts of information, that it's kind of grown into a narrative of its own. So let's rewind all the way back to December 2013. Yes, 2013. It's been almost 3 years, can you believe it? Since this game was first announced, although a lot of people didn't seem to notice that at first, because it seemed like I saw the trailer in December 2013, and I got really hyped about it, tried to show it to everybody, and got really excited about it, and thought it was going to be the most amazing thing ever, and no one seemed to talk about it. And then 6 months later, boom, E3 comes around. Suddenly, the E3 trailer, everyone's talking about it. It's like the hype had a time release capsule. That's fine. But in the meantime, not only in that amount of time, but also in the 2 years that followed after that E3 release up till now, I have had time to process this hype and think about it more. And it has definitely tempered and reduced a bit over time. And a lot of people jumped to Spore as their first thing, because a lot of people had that as their experience of a really hyped up, amazing game that was going to do everything they never thought possible in video games, and then it turned out it kind of didn't do those things, and everyone kind of suffered from post-Sportum depression, and that's fine, but I never had that experience. For me, the example's actually Mass Effect, the original Mass Effect. Now don't get me wrong, Mass Effect 1 is actually one of my favorite games ever made, but not for the reasons I originally bought it. Because when some of you might not even remember this anymore, from back in 2007, so long ago at this point. But when Mass Effect was announced, they were hyping it as a massive galaxy exploration game. Sound familiar? It actually gets really weirdly familiar when you go back and watch the original trailer of that game about the exploration. It looks suspiciously like a lot of the stuff being promised by No Man's Sky. And when I realized that, I'm like, oh no, wait a minute. I think about how exploration happened in Mass Effect, and those were just barren, boring worlds. They were the worst part of the game. It was also way smaller than originally anticipated. It was just some tiny, lifeless planets that were all side content, and most of it was kind of the most ignorable content in the entire game. Now, obviously, No Man's Sky does not have that problem, because it's pretty well confirmed how absolutely massive it is, but it gets me in that state of mind of worrying about buying too quickly into a short trailer with some rapid cutting. It's dangerous because you use that as a template and then you fill in all the gaps, basically. They give you the skeleton framework of a thing that is everything you've ever hoped it would be, but they don't show you the nitty-gritty details. You don't get to... It's not the same thing as playing the game for 3 hours, it's just a vague concept. But it's so vivid and so promising that we kind of filled the rest in with meaning, and we kind of interpret it to be this whole game that it may or may not actually be. And that's really noteworthy, because some of you, if you actually played the Mass Effect 1 after seeing those trailers, are probably rolling in laughter at the very concept of that being an exploration-based game in the first place. And that just shows you how weird and misleading a trailer can be sometimes. And in the case of No Man's Sky, I think it's the opposite, where it's going to be a huge world, obviously, or worlds, obviously, but those trailers are a bunch of very carefully selected scenes of perfectly shot moments of a dogfight and shooting through an asteroid, and look at this crazy watering hole in the middle of an oasis with super dragon dinosaurs and fauna, and look at these NPCs, and it's so rapidly cut that you can kind of just get this feeling the game's always going to be this beautiful, cohesive experience. But can it actually be that way? Because here's the issue. It is procedurally generated, and some people might forget what that means, but it is just made by an algorithm. And the thing about algorithms is that they can't be that interesting all the time. They just generally can't be. And that's a little worrying to me, because this is a game about exploration, and as a general concept, one of my favorite things about playing games is exploring in them. And I do that in a lot of my RPGs and a lot of my other games like that, and there's a sticking point there, because when it comes to a game like Dark Souls, for example, and its ungodly, incredible, like, labyrinthine and carefully crafted map, is that place is fun to explore because it was carefully put together. And when that same franchise tried to do procedural generation, in the case of Chalice Dungeons and Bloodborne, the experience kind of fell apart. Everything was cookie cutter and placed together, and nothing ever felt important and carefully crafted. And that's important, because stuff that's carefully crafted is how you get the proper experience where good, cool moments can happen. To some extent, when we talk about exploring, we usually mean that we want to walk over some ridge and find a lost city, or some impossible organism that we never thought we'd see before, or wreckage of a destroyed spaceship and lost civilizations, and something surprising and incredible. But space is kind of boring. There's cool stuff that you can highlight when NASA loves to do that, but a lot of it's empty and dead and lifeless and flat and monotonous. And one of the core things they're advertising here is its sheer scale and how huge it is. But how do you explore something that's huge, and how do you find the good things in something that's huge? And is it gonna be interesting to get to them, or are you just gonna go and get to a place and it's like, oh look, cool obelisk thing that they placed there in what's otherwise a completely irrelevant planet that's covered in dust or something? To some extent, I think that exploration in games where we think about exploration often specifically benefits from some level of confinement and some level of reduced options. You play a game and you're given a left or right option, and you try to figure out in your head which one's going to be the one that goes forward and which one's going to be the one that's a weird dead end with stuff at the end of it, and you try to explore that weird dead end. And really interestingly crafted games like Dark Souls or Deus Ex Human Revolution can have these multifaceted, crazy levels with so many branches you can't even tell which one's the right one and which one's the side one, but it all leads to all these different possibilities. But like that's something that's fun to explore, because all of it's placed and it's going somewhere, or serves a purpose, or does something, or is there to be used. But when it's just plains of grass going in every direction, at one point do you stop feeling like you're discovering things and more that you're just walking? Like, I found a gold vein, or some resource that exists in the game. Look at this mountain. It's over there. It sticks up. There's nothing to do there. It's there, though. Like, is that going to be our reality? I kind of wonder. And just how dramatic is this procedural generation? Because in every demo I've seen so far, the landscape kind of just feels like it's hilly and rocky, and maybe they're keeping that away from us a bit, but it seems like it won't be as dramatic. Can I walk along the landscape and find the Grand Canyon, basically, but in space? Can I find this massive, ungodly chasm before me that stretches for miles, and I'm struck by its sheer scale and its impossibility? Or am I mostly just going to be walking around on lumpy spheres? And can you ever fully explore an area, or can you be as satisfied exploring an area if you can't really ever finish exploring it? Like, imagine taking a giant globe and then taking a tiny, tiny pencil, and you just start scribbling on that globe. That's basically you walking on a planet in the game, isn't it? Like, you just are very slowly covering this tiny, tiny speck of the planet. So, like, when do you leave a planet? When do you feel satisfied that you've explored enough? Is there stuff worth exploring? Is there any reason to go around? Or do you really just land on random rocks, walk around in random directions, and then just leave to other random rocks until you eventually find the middle of the galaxy? Is this whole thing a giant road trip where you're just finding gas stations along the way to make the road trip continue to be possible, but along the side of the road is just a bunch of highways and then signs that might indicate where the next gas station is? And in this case, maybe a gas station is 3 different resource types you have to mine off of rocks and bird shit or something, but is it going to be compelling the whole time? The landscapes have me worried enough, but one of the things that I really have difficulty conceiving of is the idea that they have some sort of procedurally generated life forms. Like, how does a small company make convincingly randomized life forms that are going to actually feel like they're new each time? Because I can't help but wonder if they're just going to be a bunch of body parts that are stuck together like Legos, and they recombine the Legos and then call it new. But how well is it going to fit together, and how constantly am I going to feel like there's new things? I mean, the first trailer for this game just had an actual shark in it, like from Earth, with surrounded by some fish that were just from Earth, and that was like the whole trailer. And those were, and then dinosaurs, like those don't feel like space creatures. And you can replace them with a chicken head, but how much can they do? The game can't have that many assets in it because it's only a few gigabytes in total, so what's the sheer variety of plant and rock and organism life? I just said rock life, it's fine. It's fine. But like, how much variety can this truly be without just being a relatively smaller number of assets being reorganized in different intervals? And to some extent, that's what worries me, is that the procedural generation sounds super, super, super ambitious and incredible and impressive, but at the same time, when you watch a trailer for the release of this game, it doesn't look that different from the trailer that they put out in December of 2013 originally, almost 3 years ago. And I can't help but notice that this is made by a company whose previous job was Joe Danger, a game where you ride a motorcycle around and do stunts in a 2D platformer on like Xbox Live indie game type stuff. Like, it's not a big thing. So I think it's actually super healthy to be skeptical about this kind of thing, because of the fact that this is a company that has no proven track record for making projects on this scale. And this kind of leads me to my next topic, which is the overall narrative surrounding this game for a while now has been, but what do you do? And it's been a valid thing for a while, because largely we've just had these really crappy trailers that are about a minute or two long, where a bunch of really rapidly cut together scenes happen, and there's no cohesiveness to it that'll give you a feeling of what the actual game is. Well, now there have been interviews, and there have been stories, and so on and so forth to help with this out, but the fact that the question keeps coming up so frequently shows how much sort of misinformation has sort of propagated in the meantime, partly because of how they've been tight-lipped about the game while announcing it almost 3 years ago. So much time has happened that, like I said, that skeletal structure of a game that you imagine in your head gets filled in by your head, and that leads to things like people going to the No Man's Sky subreddit and leaving these threads where they ask about the game, and they're basically assuming that it's an MMO when it's not remotely that kind of game. They think they're going to get together with all their friends and they're going to play. And so little information's been out freely for so long that people have their own ideas of what this game is, and I expect an entire wave of disappointment to be coming out over the next month, basically. Not because the game is necessarily bad, and not because it's even the game itself's fault, but just because the level of attention the game got for so long has led to a lot of people actually being ready to get the game for reasons other than the actual game that it is. But for me, there's a more personal gripe, and this is the most specific to me part of this entire topic, is that I'm a bit concerned about the fact that the game is an open-world survival game. Now, first of all, congrats for essentially being one of the first open-world survival games to exist that's not in early access, because that entire genre is a nightmare of PC games that will never be finished, and it's kind of been an embarrassing part of all of Steam for a long time now, with weird exceptions only really being games like Miasmata and Don't Starve. But one of my ongoing issues with the open-world survival game genre has always been that they're just kind of games where you just do and you just are. And actually, I'm slightly excited about No Man's Sky specifically because of the fact that it might finally be the one missing ingredient that has been missing from this entire genre for me. You see, when you hop into a game like Rust, or DayZ, or Ark, you just kind of exist and are, and you can like knock down trees by punching them, or you can build a fort, or you can drug up a dinosaur until it loves you, but you just stay in that small space forever, and there's no end goal and nowhere to go. And when somebody's used to having something to work towards, sometimes just making up your own fun isn't always the easiest thing to do. So, for that reason, I kind of appreciate the fact that No Man's Sky seems to have at least one implicit goal, if should you choose to accept it, to try to go to the middle of the galaxy. Like, okay, that's a reason to keep moving. So I always, if I want to, unless I get distracted by something else that I want to do, which it was also in itself good, call that a in-head side quest, cool, distractions are good, but it's not, if I lose track of things that are worth doing, at least I can default back to, hey, I can keep doing whatever I need to do next to get closer to the middle of the galaxy. That part's nice. But as an end result, what do you do in the actual gameplay? Do you just keep mining rocks and resources to get upgrades to go further and loop that? You can make that work in some games, but in other games it can be the most dull experience ever done by man. And once again, this is made by a company who has zero track record of making that kind of experience interesting, so I don't know if it'll work on me, and that worries me. And it's something that I of course wasn't thinking about in December of 2013 when I first saw a spaceship take off in a world with no skybox. And that kind of takes me back to those trailers I was talking about, those rapidly cut ones where they just keep cutting. People criticize that when it happens in an action film because it's disorienting and feels like it's badly directed. But at least in an action film, it's actually one scene. In the case of the No Man's Skies trailers, it's just 17 completely different pieces of imagery strung together in 12 seconds, and it's very hard to follow or glean any information from it. But it's also scary because those are all meant to be provocative information, provocative, cool images that make you want to get the game, but it takes me back to how people make YouTube videos for those sort of open world survival games I've talked about. People often make these sort of highlight videos. Look at this crazy thing that happened. Oh my god, Argyle alligators. He's going around Rust and he's interviewing people and they're so caught off guard. Isn't this funny? But that's like hours and hours and hours and hours of recording cut down to like 5 minutes of an interesting thing happening, which is kind of how a lot of coverage of open world survival games go, because they're an entire genre where the 99% of the experience is actually kind of dull. And so I'm worried that the trailers themselves are maybe misrepresenting your average experience of playing the game just as much as that kind of stuff does, because your average experience of playing No Man's Sky might be walking around in a circle for 2 hours collecting carbon. That's honestly about all I really wanted to talk about here. Now, you might be misled into thinking that I'm anti-hyped or I'm thinking this game's going to be terrible or something like that. That's not the case. It's just that I've had 3 years to have to develop new concerns about this product over time, and there's just nothing interesting to talk about the good part, which is that I sure hope that I'm going to see a massive universe. I sure hope it's interesting. I sure hope surprises happen. I sure hope that I am awestruck at some point and I have a good time exploring it. But there's just nothing to talk about the good side. But the concerns I've been growing with over and over again, all these new concerns I keep getting, the list keeps growing, and I really hope to cut some of them down here. So this Friday, it's going to come out on PC. I'm going to be streaming it. I think that's going to be one of the things that goes on for me for a while, is that, yeah, I'll probably stream this entire playthrough of No Man's Sky, because if nothing else, being an open world survival game, it probably has a lot of downtime, so maybe I'll be interacting with chat, and we'll be hanging out, and I'll have probably plenty of time to discuss whatever you guys bring up, because it's probably going to be a bit slow-paced at times. But yeah, I sincerely hope that this game is great. I'm probably going to have to spend $60 on it, because I doubt I'm getting any sort of special treatment like some YouTubers do. So, like any customer, I want it to be a great game after 3 years of looking forward to it. I just really hope that my growing list of concerns doesn't turn out to be right. Thanks for watching like always, guys, and let's find out whether or not this game's any good. There should be a link in the description that leads you to the larger playlist, and once it's Friday and beyond and the game's out and everything on PC, there will be videos in there that are me playing it. And I hope it's good. I really do, guys. See you next time.